Good afternoon, board members. Today, us from WGL Consultants are going to go over how to improve the capital expenditure request process for Stryker Corporation. First, we're going to start with an introduction on what currently is the process. So capital expenditure request forms are generally filled out by division heads when they want to request new spending of capital. There are two ways in which that they divide the forms currently. It's operational CERs and M&A CERs. Of course, operational are more day-to-day operations related to the current state of the business, while M&A capital expending requests are obviously more related to the acquisition of other firms, which is known for Stryker Corporation. And historically, they have been very involved in the merger and acquisition process. So it makes sense that it's one of the biggest portions under CER. They are a practical way for Stryker to organize itself and see which areas need capital spending and which need trimming, so the firm can, better analyze their cash flow targets. Next slide, please. Perfect. So some of the elements that we see on the CERs, initially, there's the economic justification and key risk factors. Initially, they use a 15% normal hurdle rate for their NPV calculations. So any project that's under that 15% is generally not undertaken by the firm. Calculations are generally made using 5 to 7 years of cash flows. There's no calculation of terminal value. So in that way, it's not really related to corporate finance theory. But there is calculation of internal rate of return and payback period. Then after that, we have the HR implementation plan and milestones. It's pretty self-explanatory. HR will start implementing the plans or projects, and there will be certain milestones that are achieved to see how the CR process is working. Sensitivity analysis is also conducted to look at the base case, best case, and worst case for most of these projects. And finally, there's the use of the capital committee for any requests that, for example, require more than 10 million, and when they require more than 2.5 million, when they're related to M&A, they have to go through a capital committee. And there are liaisons assigned at each division that are the direct point of contact between the divisions and the capital committee. So basically, we're just trying to try to optimize all of these processes. Now, Nancy's going to go over the strengths and weaknesses of the current CER process.
Thank you. So when we looked at this process more in depth, we did notice many strengths. The CR process relies on an analytical framework that is grounded in corporate finance theory. You guys require the use of NPV and IRR and sensitivity analysis as well. As Rafael mentioned, these are gold standard financial measures for making these capital budgeting decisions. Now, there are limitations to some of the measures you're using, which I'll go over soon, but you do have a good foundation for the analytical groundwork. There are many operational benefits of the CER process as well. With a decentralized company like yours, having a centralized capital budgeting system in place is a great internal control mechanism. It adds consistency and discipline across your divisions. When you have standard financial measures and standard documentation requirements, you have a consistent way to compare projects across divisions. It aligns the individual divisions towards achieving your common corporate goals, and you still get to balance a little bit the decentralized decision-making at the division level while adding transparency by requiring these larger proposals to go to you guys, the board and capital committee, for review. So there are several strengths to what you have in place already. Now, I mentioned there are some limitations to the existing system, like with the analytical framework. While I said that NPV and IRR are great financial measures, there are limitations to both and how you use them. For example, when you calculate NPV and IRR using cash flows that are only 5 to 7 years out without a terminal value, you risk rejecting high-value projects that return significant cash flows in later periods. There's a similar issue with using the payback period. It favors projects that just pay you back quickly, but ignores value maximization. Now IRR, while it doesn't have the shortcomings of payback period, still limited because you can't use IRR to rank projects. So if you have a limited capital budget, you can't use IRR to pick your top 10 projects, as an example. If you wanted to rank your projects, you would have to use NPV or an NPV alternative like the Profitability Index, PI, which your company is not currently using. PI measures the present value of inflows relative to the present value of cash outlays for a project. So you can use it to rank projects when you have a limited cash amount in your capital budgeting amount. Operationally, your existing CR system is striking a decent balance between decentralized and centralized capital budgeting decisions. But the balance is still favoring all the decisions made at the divisional levels even more, because under the dollar threshold you have for board review, the divisions are still approving many projects on their own. And do you and the board and the capital committee know what they're deciding to review, approve, and reject? And for those proposals that do go up to you or the capital committee for review, there's a very lengthy process. There's lots of documentation required. These are all symptoms of having a bureaucratic process. So there are opportunities to streamline. Before we go into these recommendations, let's discuss some metrics you can use to evaluate your system performance, both as it currently exists and after you implement our recommendations. In terms of analytical and financial metrics, you can reassess the NPV and IRR of all your previously approved projects and reevaluate these every year. Maybe you can judge your IRRs against a new hurdle rate or revise cash flow projections and NPV analysis to reflect any new changes in cash flows that you're learning about. But this annual review ensures that projects you previously approved continue to reflect positive NPVs and IRRs in excess of your WACC. In terms of operational performance of the capital budgeting system, if you're able to cut back on the number of projects requiring board or committee review, reduce the length of the approval process, this would represent an operational efficiency improvement. Finally, you can always seek direct inputs from employees involved in the process, and this helps gives a voice to employees in a decentralized environment. Now, my colleague Kweku will discuss our recommendations and how they align with your corporate strategy.
Thank you, Nancy. Here we'll be looking at a long-term strategy and goals for Stryker. Stryker, it's a leading medical technology company specialized in manufacturing medical devices and equipment. Currently, the long-term strategy and growth for Stryker will be focused on 4 key areas. We're looking at customer focus, we're looking at innovation, global expansion, and financial performance. So on the customer focus point, where the customer is the essential part of our business, the core and centric part of the business. Stryker will consistently deliver high quality products, excelling in sales and marketing, and maintaining world-class supply chain. The company establishes itself as a trusted partner and a leader in the healthcare industry. Stryker strives to exceed customer expectations at every stage of the customer journey through its intense customer commitment and specialization in business unit. At the innovation level, we'll be considering fostering the organizational culture in terms of research and development, making strategic investments, seeking opportunities through acquisitions. Stryker reaffirms its commitment to innovation and growth through these efforts. The company strives to improve healthcare outcomes, expand its market reach, and solidify its position as a leader in medical device industry. When it comes to global expansion, we'll be looking at strategic partnership where we can leverage our expertise and knowledge with other firms in other local markets to expand our reach. We're also poised to navigate the evolving healthcare landscape to serve diverse customer bases and contribute to the well-being of both individuals and the planet. So at this point, we will also be considering our ESG goals, environmental, social, and governance, and make sure that all the projects we undertake has a negative impact on the environment. On the financial performance, we'll be looking at reducing cost, the cost structure. So by continuously reducing cost and generating free cash flow and pursuing scale and process improvement, Stryker can strengthen its financial position and support future projects and position itself for sustained growth and success in different markets. Next slide, please. So here we're looking at some of the recommendations we'll be making to the current system. One, we'll be looking at bureaucracy. Currently, projects are evaluated based on cost, and because of the dollar amount threshold, projects above 2.5 million is being pushed into the capital committee, and anything above 10 million is being pushed to the board. One of our recommendations is to increase the threshold so that most projects will stay within the capital committee and at the departmental level, whilst those with high dollar amounts based on risk profile will move to the board, which will lessen the load at the board, how often the board has to meet to vote on capital projects. Another recommendation we'll be looking at is changing the organizational structure to a more hybrid system. So which in this case, we will encourage interdepartmental relationship, whereby people from different departments can come together, form groups, and share ideas and promote a culture of collaboration. Stryker can also tap into its workforce for collective knowledge and skill by having a flexible organizational structure. Next slide, please. Now we're looking at the hurdle rate. Currently, Stryker has a hurdle rate of 16%, which is probably one of their key cornerstones for driving the success they have now, which they're growing at a rate of 20% annually. By looking at, by considering projects based on the IRR, because you need to have a positive IRR, which is above 16% for your project to be viable. By doing that, we might be leaving out projects that will have long-term value, compared to a shorter payoff period, or looking at the weighted cost of capital. So based on this, we recommend that Stryker approach what we call the risk matrix or risk profile in its projects. So this will help management to streamline the decision-making process and push down the decision-making to the lower levels, either at the VP level or capital committee level. Stryker should reassess its current approval process and shift the focus towards elevating the risk profile of projects instead. I'll hand over to Raphael, who will pick up on how we develop the risk profile matrix.
Thank you, Kweku. So pretty straightforward. Our recommendation is going to be the use of a risk matrix, as Kweku mentioned, to grade our different projects. So we're going to have this that shows the likelihood as low, medium, or high, and severity going from 1 to 5, obviously 1 being the lowest risk and 5 being the highest risk. So division heads will now be able to use this risk matrix to reduce bureaucracy. Projects would be sorted based on the risk likelihood and severity. Any CER with a risk severity above 3 would have to be consulted directly with the Capital Investment Committee. But then any operational CER, which are the ones that are more frequent in Stryker, that are under 2.5 million with less than 3 on the severity in the risk matrix, will be left to the discretion of each division head. And if you can, thank you so much. And then if we leverage it, not only to target the number of CERs brought forth to the committee, but to also reduce procedural requirements. So as mentioned, for operational CERs that have risk ratings below 3, we have a CER light documentation requirement, addresses only key points, a project summary, financial summary, different risk controls, and the project performance goals. And then committee members have to complete the review within a week. Then all CERs with a risk rating above 3, we would implement the full existing documentation with the detailed business proposition and the financial analysis. But then committee and board members have to complete the review within 2 weeks. Now Nancy's going to go over our last recommendation for Stryker.
Thank you. Our last recommendation is to revamp your org structure to a more hybrid approach in organizing divisions. In our proposed hybrid structure, which is on the right, each division still maintains dedicated scientists and technical experts, but they're instead supported by a common pool of non-technical and non-expertise staff. They don't belong to any division, but they serve each division depending on their flexibility and free time. We can implement cross-training and rotational opportunities to further support collaboration, but this maintains decentralization while promoting interdivisional collaboration. So we think this will add value to your organization. Thank you, Board of Directors, for your time. Please let us know if you have any questions.